Good afternoon, and welcome back to The Propaganda Critic. I am your host, Daniel Begley, and today is Wednesday, September 13th, 2017. On today's episode, we'll be taking a look at a project coordinated by the Clinton Global Initiative, which is part of the Clinton Foundation, with Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors and the Bush Foundation, in coordination with various other governmental and non-governmental organizations, to exploit Native American tribal land for profit. Now, you may not even have heard of this initiative, even within the alternative media, in part due to the mass distraction which was created by the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation protest of the Dakota Access Pipeline, which I'm sure you've heard of because it got a lot of media coverage. Now, if you don't recall, this Dakota Access Pipeline protest was regarding the Army Corps of Engineers' preparation to construct a gas pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline, beneath Lake Oahe, which is part of the Missouri River, and was also the primary source of fresh drinking water for the Standing Rock Sioux people. But as the protest raged and filled the headlines for weeks, quietly behind the scenes, none other than the Rockefellers themselves, in conjunction with Clinton and the Bush Foundation, were engaged in a joint wind power development project coordinating with the Sioux tribe, in which they were going to build a wind farm on Sioux land. This wind farm, once constructed, would feed into an electrical infrastructure which was not even owned by the Sioux, and which would carry the power that that wind farm generated off to neighboring areas, not even part of the Sioux tribe, to be sold. And just as with third world nations, the U.S. federal government, under the guise of development, has been shoving its slimy tentacles through federal agencies, NGOs, and multinational corporate proxies into the lives of the world's most vulnerable populations. And that's been happening for decades, exploiting and commoditizing their natural resources to expand government power and control. I encourage you to go read my article on newsbud.com, which is entitled Clinton, Rockefeller, and the New Green Revolution, Are Native Resources Fueling the Global Empire? Here is an excerpt from the article discussing the parallel strategies of the Green Revolution of the 1960s and today's green energy revolution. So in virtual lockstep with the Green Revolution of 40 plus years ago, today's green energy revolution looks to have been pulled straight out of their playbook. The overall strategy is effectively the same. Step 1, galvanize public opinion with an impending global catastrophe for which the only solution is urgent, unwavering action. So in the 1960s, this catastrophe was the specter of famine precipitated by overpopulation in the third world. Today's U.S. and political financial elites warn of the specter of catastrophic man-made global warming, albeit based on biased research and questionable data. And for more information on that, I would encourage you to go look at the James Corbett's interview with, I can't remember what her name is. She's a climate scientist. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. So, steps 2 and 3. Co-opt the power of the state to strengthen the foundation's global influence. Commoditize and consolidate the world's natural resources under the centralized control of a global hegemon. So throughout the 1950s, the Rockefeller Foundation was a revolving door through which former and future State Department members passed. Also, as a former Assistant Secretary of State, the Foundation's president, Dean Rusk, used the agricultural philanthropy of the Rockefeller Foundation as a weapon against communism. In the 1960s, the foundation both served the U.S. national security agenda and generated tremendous profits through its development scheme of outsourcing industrialized farming. In the Joint Strategic Plan through 2017, the U.S. State Department and USAID expressed the desire to further centralize global governance and to forge an international agreement applicable to all nations that would significantly limit the right of those nations to produce their own energy. independent, of course, of a centrally regulated and enforced global market. As long as they hook into the global market, just like the Standing Rock Sioux are hooking into the infrastructure that they've provided, as long as they're doing that, they're fine. They can produce energy because it's going to the global elites. Now, the Department of State and USAID, in their own words, intend to, quote, lead the global fight against climate change with quote, aggressive, smart, and effective action, unquote, using, quote, diplomatic tools, aka sanctions, acts of war, etc., to ensure the other nations comply with their international agreements. So they need to make sure that they enforce compliance and use their centralized authority to override the sovereignty of other nations, just like the nation of the Sioux Nation. The actions of the Clinton Foundation on Native American land is a microcosm and a sign of things to come with global development. And if you don't believe me, go on to the U.S. State Department's strategic plan for 2017, and I think you will be quite disturbed at what you see. So, I will work to build a more comprehensive video of this later, or I'm also intending to look more into some of the other ways that this global international development is taking place. In the meantime, leave me a comment, give me suggestions. I'm open to hearing what you have to say, and your input will help me to shape my research. So I really appreciate your watching, and if you like what you see, please feel free to contribute, share it with your friends. I am open to any ideas or criticism. Let's take the time to discuss critically the issues that we face in the world. So thanks a lot.